9 facts about the solar system. Amazing and interesting world. Especially the fourth one. Ninth, if sound waves could travel in the vacuum of space, what will we hear? First, we know sound is vibration in a physical medium, so it can't propagate in a vacuum. In a vacuum, sound doesn't travel. The gloss is different. We know all about electromagnetic radiation, including light, can be interpreted as vibrations of electromagnetic fields, extremely fast. They are massless, so photons don't need matter to travel. The speed of light in a vacuum is 300,000 kilometers per second, a slight decrease in the atmosphere, down to 200,000 kilometers per second when passing through the glass. But if sound waves could travel through space, solar activity alone is enough to drive us crazy. The sound he produces will be more than 100 times stronger. Convey to us. It's like a car horn in meditation right next to you. Astronomers record the sun's boost waves by, came to this conclusion. These records, from careful monitoring of the motion of the sun's surface, the energy released every second is equivalent to 100 trillion hydrogen bomb. If for some reason the sun suddenly disappeared, the light only lasts 8 minutes, but we've been hearing voices for over 13 years. It's just that sound travels faster than light, more than 1 million times slower. Eighth, natural satellites of 2 planets in the solar system. In the most common sense of the term, it's a celestial object. It orbits a larger celestial body, whether it is a planet, dwarf planet, or asteroid. In the solar system, usually the mass ratio between primary and secondary celestial bodies. This ratio is very high among planets. A planet is usually more powerful than any of its moons, thousands of times heavier. The diameter is dozens of times larger. This is why the Earth, the lunar system, is a unique. The moon's diameter is 3,474 kilometers, more than a quarter of the Earth. Its mass is about 1/80th that of the Earth. We ourselves regard the moon as a satellite, but to be exact, the Earth-Moon system should be called a double planet. To prove this, consider the old mass ratio in a planet. In second place is the Ganymede-Jupiter system. That's 1 in 12,800. That's a huge difference. But if Pluto, it is still considered a planet. The title of double planet still belongs to Charon. Pluto system, its mass ratio is an astonishing 1 to 8.6 between the 7th Venus and the Earth. Strange and controversial connection. Until the 1960s, there is very little information about the autobiography of Venus. You can't get any results with a telescope. A thick atmosphere envelops the planet. All surface details are hidden. The atmosphere is so dense and uniform, so that there is no reference point. Only recent radar technology, so that we can understand more. We therefore confirm the direction of Venus autobiography, except for Uranus and Pluto. In contrast to other major planets and dwarf planets, in astronomical terms, this rotation is called retrograde. Early studies suggest that Venus rotates once every 244 days. This makes one guess. Venus is twice with the Earth met in approximately 584 days. It turns twice. This means that every time he encounters the Earth, show us the same side. But is this guess correct? After more accurate measurement, scientists have discovered Venus. It actually turns every 243.026 days. This time is a little shorter than previously thought. It's a very small difference, but if you keep this gap, when Venus meets Earth, show us the faces. It won't always be the same. And here's another interesting thing. Venus rotates 3 times in 729 days. The Earth goes around the Sun exactly twice in 730 days. So it seems the rotation period of Venus and the Earth's orbital period, there is a 3:2 ratio. Is this really just a coincidence? The dance of the sixth Galilean moon. 400 years ago, astronomer Galileo Galilei announced the discovery of 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. Each one can pass through his telescope, see a clear white spot. However, it was not until the past 40 years, astronomer, to study Jupiter's moons in detail. Meet Io Europa, the fascinating world of Ganymede and Callisto. Although they are all similar in size, it's about a quarter of the radius of the Earth. But these 4 satellites are different. Io, intense volcanic activity, Europa covered with soldiers. Ganymede has a magnetic field. Callisto is riddled with ancient craters. Also icy Europa, considered to be in the solar system. There may be strong candidates for life, but there's just one problem. Still puzzles planetary scientists. Why Europa and Ganymede's orbit through orbital resonance connect together? Surprisingly, their orbital period, it's a 1:224 ratio. Basically, the time to complete an orbit at Ganymede, finish with Europa twice, and IOS completes it 4 times. It sounds incredible. We may assume possible tidal mechanisms. When the Galilean satellite was formed, they don't resonate with each other. They're both on slightly smaller orbits than they are now. As time goes by, after they are formed, Io's orbit is due to the tidal action of Jupiter and slowly move outward. This coincides with our moon slowly moving away from the Earth. 3.8 centimeters per year, 1.5 inches is the same effect, the equatorial uplift of our planet. The same thing happens between Jupiter and Io. Bulge in Jupiter's atmosphere causes the orbit of Io to increase. When the Io track expands, his years are getting longer until he approaches a 2/1 resonance with Europa. Once they reach resonance, they're locked in. The attractive force between them strengthened him. Io still causes tides on Jupiter, but his orbit is still trying to expand. As the Io's orbit continues to expand, he gave Europa an attractive force ladder at every pass, extended their orbit until Ganymede reaches 2/1 male needle. The orbit is still expanding, but it's much slower because each additional one, the more difficult it is to transfer energy. Callisto is too far, can't join this dance. But people think he may also resonate in 1.5 billion years. 5th, Pluto. From where did he release it into space? Nitrogen. Pluto is so small, so hard to understand. How gravity manages to maintain its atmosphere. We know the dwarf planet continuously at 50 kilograms per second, losing its atmosphere. It is composed almost entirely of nitrogen. Since the New Horizons probe's leap in 2015, scientists have been thinking, why hasn't Pluto used up all its nitrogen? The best assumption is some hidden geological processes. All reserves of nitrogen must be created, but the exact process remains a mystery. Scientists currently estimate that the planet has about 30 billion tons of nitrogen atmosphere and losing about 1.5 million tons a year. Basically, he only needs a few thousand to tens of thousands of years. We can lose that atmosphere. This time is actually very short in the solar system. Considering Pluto has existed for over 4 billion years, humans in their brief period of having an atmosphere, the likelihood of encountering this dwarf planet, very small, but something is replenishing the supply. There are 2 basic mechanisms for replenishing Pluto's atmosphere, or brought from outside or generated from within. Comets are likely to be the main cause, because they can deposit nitrogen on impact, air, or penetration. The surface has been exposed to a large amount of frozen gas. Scientists have calculated numbers, but even using their most conservative estimates, the most comets, deepest impact crater, anything from an alien planet, can't cover nitrogen gas loss deficit. Instead, they assumed that nitrogen gas is produced through more conventional geological activities. such as ice volcanism or tectonic activity, to supplement. But no one knows yet what's driving this geological agitation, because Pluto is too small and too old, unable to keep most of the residual energy from formation, and he's far from the other big planets, unable to stir its interior by facing west. It seems that something inside this dwarf planet is causing these exhalations, but the exact reason is still unclear. Fourth, sunsets on Mars appear blue to the human eye. Mars is known as the red planet because it's rich in iron oxides. Make this planet, it appears as red as visible from the Earth. The sky on Mars is also red. Unlike the Earth is blue. However, at sunrise and sunset, the magical exchange of two colors, although sunsets on Earth are red, but Perseverance Hiroshi and Hiroshi, images of Mars rovers like Kiho show the colors of sunrises and sunsets on Mars, obviously blue. The reason is that the atmosphere of Mars, unlike the way Earth's atmosphere scatters light, because he has less gas, more dust. On Mars, red light is scattered at a larger angle than blue light. So at sunset, as sunlight passes through a thicker atmosphere, the scattering of red light is more pronounced. Therefore, only sunlight with more blue tones survives. Little knowledge of survival. Scattering of light is less dependent on the chemical composition of the atmosphere and more dependent on the size of the particles causing the scattering. The Earth's atmosphere is composed almost entirely of small particles, mainly nitrogen and oxygen molecules. These particles are larger than the typical wavelength of visible light is much smaller. Under these circumstances, the dominant scattering phenomenon is sharp scattering. He scatters much more blue light than red light. On the other hand, the atmosphere of Mars is mainly composed of larger particles. So this is dust floating around due to the low gravity of the red planet. Dust is abundant. When light is scattered by particles larger than its own wavelength, the dominant scattering mechanism is not Rayleigh. Mystery scattering. This is the opposite of Rayleigh scattering, scattering red light more than blue light. At sunset, light passes through more of the atmosphere, so there's going to be a lot more misty scattering on Mars. The red light is scattered, forming a blue rime around the solar disk, and this is what the rover has repeatedly captured. The third one is a pediatric wild satellite, one of the strangest moons in the solar system. It's an irregularly shaped Miranda. It is the most powerful of Uranus' 5 main moons. Small and innermost satellite, discovered by Gerard Coybaugh on February 16, 1948. Taisha, the name of the hero in The Storm in Shakespeare. But while Shakespeare's Miranda is a young and beautiful woman, Miranda satellite, it looks like it was pieced together from the pieces. This small, rugged satellite is 470 kilometers in diameter. The surface is covered with sloping and crossed ice plates, strange and rugged terrain, potholed plains and darkness, irregular canyon, except for a chunk of icy rock full of gullies. Let the Grand Canyon look like a piece of paper. There's nothing warm or fuzzy outside the incision. How did small satellites become like this? It's still a mystery. One theory holds that shortly after the trip, Miranda is just a smooth ice hockey until one or more impacts shatter it. And eventually, the pieces came back together. But it's not a sphere in the traditional sense. Another hypothesis holds that meteorite impact on his surface caused local melting. Rising mud. They form what scientists call coronae. Other theories, it suggests some icy volcanic activity, and by Uranus, the attractive forces of other satellites. Internal heating. Or Miranda may have started to divide. It was divided into a similar core. Something slow and crustal, but it froze before it was done. There is no definite answer at present. The only basis It's just Voyager 2. At the time of the leap, on January 24, 1986, the only image captured. Second, Venus should not appear as gray as the Moon. On the Moon, when the Moon is in the fine crescent phase, a region of the Moon will reflect light from the Earth, and slightly bright this phenomenon so that observers on the Moon can see the light emitted by the Earth. Surprisingly, the same thing seems to be happening on Venus. The gray light appears as a faint greenish gray or red light, affecting the planet as the illuminated half, all or part of the ball. The first report of this phenomenon, Giovanni Riccioli, dating back to 1643. Since then, many astronomers, including the great William Herschel, reported his existence, especially down the river or when the planet appears as a system meniscus due to the presence of visible launches, and it seems to be confirmed. What is his possible reason? So far, bright in the shadow hemisphere, the only visible light emission that has been detected is caused by the recombination of oxygen atoms in the atmosphere. It's called ash. When on the illuminated side, carbon monoxide in the upper atmosphere, dissociated by ultraviolet sunlight, oxygen atom, blown by strong winds at an altitude of about 60 to 70 kilometers, move to the shadow hemisphere and reassemble the molecules, emitting a faint green light. On Earth, something like this happens and make up the majority of the natural night sky brightness. Stay away from artificial light pollution sources. The observed emission, could it be caused by this mechanism? It seems unlikely because the intensities involved vary widely. It certainly is. The emission intensity on Venus is much higher than that on Earth, and we see significant spikes, but all measurements show the brightness level is much lower than the level reported by observers. Does the launch sometimes get stronger? Zhejiang explanation. Why does the glow seem to vary in intensity and not always observable? But this possibility, although based on known and studied mechanisms, doesn't seem reasonable. Another explanation may be more controversial because he's based on data that's still being studied in depth. Considering the presence of lightning in Venus' turbulent atmosphere, early detectors, such as Venera in Russia and Panier in the United States, electrical activity associated with lightning has been detected, but the optical images are contradictory. Only in one case have evidence of flashes caused by them. In 1998-99 instruments during a planetary flyby, this activity has not been confirmed. In 2007, the European Gold Star Express, the arrival of the detector and new research finally confirmed the existence of lightning in the atmosphere of Venus. The altitude is about 50-60 kilometers. These are usually more intense than electrical discharges on Earth. Between the sulfuric acid clouds does not discharge to the ground. Their density is about 100 per second. The event appears to be compatible. It can be shown that in the unilluminated hemisphere, the faint glow of the observation track, this second hypothesis, it currently appears to be a visible launch with the observation track, the most consistent, but a real bong. And consistent observations by multiple observers over time, not found yet. The first solar system was more than 4 light-years wide, or 250,000 times the distance from the Earth to the Sun. Our solar system contains planets, asteroid, comet, dwarf planets, and other trillions of objects. They all orbit the Sun, but it's unbelievable. All of this are only a small part of the inner solar system. Thanks to Voyager probes, we know that outside the Coburn Belt, around 80-00 astronomical units, there's a region called the Middle Finger Seismic Wave. This is where the solar peak collides with the interstellar medium, interstellar ring by interstellar wind, shaped into a teardrop shape called a circular astrolabe. If we could observe the solar system from the outside, you will see this shape, but the true size of the solar system is determined by its attractive force and the distance at which objects still feel the attractive force of the Sun. In the farthest reaches of the solar system is the Oort cloud. This is a hypothetical cloud of icy objects. They could be 100,000 astronomical units away from the Sun, or 1.87 light-years away, orbiting the Sun. Although we cannot see the Oort cloud directly, but people think, occasionally fall into the long-period coma of the inner solar system. Stars come from this region, so we can say with certainty, the influence of the Sun. It even affects the distance from us. A neighbor galaxy 4 light-years away, Alpha Coefficient Centaurus. It is now widely believed that between two stars, there is a constant exchange of objects and matter, like the mysterious Amamamam, perhaps originated from these hypotheses of Centauri. It undoubtedly provides us with about life, possibly from a star, a fascinating scene that easily spreads to another star. The universe is big. Life is bigger. Good night, everyone.